Now, good afternoon. Welcome to Chapter 3, and as before, it is recorded for our off-campus student and for you as well. I understand some of you like to listen to this after class. Today we are going to start by getting a bit of overview again on the structure, on the course schedule. I somehow forgot to put in Chapter 4, which is unbelievable, as it is a very important chapter. So we are here now. We are now in Chapter 3, talking about, or will be talking about, the organization of project management within companies. But let's take a look at this one first. So we are here, 23rd. We will cover chapters 3 and 4 today, and I will give you an insight to the Morocco case, which you have been looking for and not found. And I'm sorry for not letting you know, but it wasn't there, because it's more like it's kind of some of you actually have seen it from the course on international business, but it's like it's not a story, of course, but it's a real case from a real business project actually done in Morocco many years ago, but you will get it afterwards. So today's topic is to cover Chapter 3 and then Chapter 4. We will also have a video from the textbook on work breakdown structure, among other things, which we will cover before Chapter 4. There will be a very easy in-class discussion and next Monday in a week I hope to have a guest speaker, which I will confirm later, but there will be the exam as scheduled. I need to talk to you after the class on that issue. Because we haven't covered Chapter 4 today, so it was not possible to put out the exam today. So we will follow the schedule. Exam in class from Chapter 1 to 4 is on Monday in a week. And few questions, basically repeating and going back into those 4 chapters, just checking where you stand. But it counts 10% of the final grade. So it's also to keep you on your toes and sort of focused on what is happening. And then, of course, after that, we just continue with the textbook. But today it's Chapter 3 and 4. Any questions? Any comments? Again, sorry for confusing you with the Morocco case, but that's how it is sometimes. So, today in Chapter 3 we're going to talk about how do we implement projects. We have already talked about what is a project. We talked about classification of projects. We talked about prioritization of projects. We used financial methods. We used non-financial criteria. And then now we are going to talk a bit about how do we implement it. Because it's not, in a small company with only 1 or 2 small or minor projects, you can actually start without any sort of proper, let's say, system or structure. But when things get a bit more complicated and you run many projects, project managers, etc., you need to have some kind of a system. You need to have a structure for how you implement projects. And that is something we're going to talk about, and that relates to the organizational structure and also the organizational culture. I was very tempted to include in this chapter the overall discussion about culture, but we are going to do that later when we talk about international projects. So today we're just going to talk about what kind of cultural issues inside the company can actually affect how you implement the project. So the main question of today will be, how will the project be implemented? What kind of a structure can or will or should be used? What is an organizational culture? The big question, of course, is what is culture? And then you can break that down into what is a country culture, what is a city culture, what is a company culture, and so on. And how will the culture in the company affect the implementation of the project? So this is more or less what we will cover from Chapter 3. Remember, first time we met, I listed up your home countries. And I also said that at a later stage it would be interesting to see, is there a difference in the way project management is conducted in those countries? And I'm still trying to find reliable sources on that. But I found something interesting, which I will show you, and then I will put these slides on my school after the class, so you will also have this. What do you think yourselves? If we just, what would be the characteristics of project manager from Spain, for example? What do you think is the difference from a project manager in Spain to someone from Germany? Anyone dares to suggest? Efficiency. The Spanish one then. Yeah. Yeah. Efficiency. Okay, German would be maybe what? Accuracy? Maybe that is sometimes similar. Or is there not a difference, maybe? Is there any difference? Why would we need to talk about the difference between project managers from different countries when we all read the same sort of theory on project management? Why would there be a difference? Have you thought about it? Yeah, we all read the same theory. I mean, the book is the same. The theory on project management is the same, whether you're from Spain or Germany. And it's also, more than anything else, project management is a question of process, step by step in a logical sequence. So you should be using the same methodology wherever you come from, but there is still a difference, because we are so different. I'm going to draw on the whiteboard here, and for the off-campus students, I might take a photo and include it in the slides, but I told you, and I was actually going to show you this the first time we met, but there is a difference. There is a big difference between Icelanders and the Danish, for example, even though we once used to be under the same control, basically. Let's say this is Icelandic side and the Danish. Now, in any project, you have to prepare yourself, right? Preparation is a key to successful projects. So preparation, in Iceland, we would not spend so much time on preparation, really. We are eager to get started. We just, once we have financed the whole thing, we just start spending money. So 10% of our work would probably be preparation. But the Danes are different. They think they have to analyze everything back and forth, and they spend 80% of their input in a project. They spend it on preparation. Okay, then of course is execution. That's where we put our money. And the Danes, they don't need to, worry, because they have already put so much into preparation. So they spend 20% of their overall effort on the preparation. We do 80%. But that brings us only up to 90. So what will be the remaining 10? Fixing problems. Because when you spend only 10% of preparation, you are bound to make mistakes. Just think about the chapters we still haven't covered about estimation, about the risk analysis. This is all included in the 80% of the Danes, but hardly in the 10% of the Icelanders. So this could be, and this is just because the way we are. I mean, we are not so disciplined as a nation, Icelanders, but maybe the Danes are more disciplined. Or the Germans, absolutely, much more disciplined. So that, of course, is affecting the way we run projects. But we can also be very effective in Iceland because we can bring in, and we, as I said last time, we normally deliver on time, but never within budget. Because we just pour on, more people, and we work extra hours, and we forget the union regulations about working hours and so on, and just finish the whole thing. But that is not the case in many other countries. Okay, I will continue trying to find some examples, but I found something I want to show you. From some study, I found something here. Differences in national culture influence not only their surface behavior, but there are also essential conditions for understanding the values adopted by business people. I think we discussed it briefly in the first class when we talk about project management and how it sort of connects with people, because it's all about people. We are organizing people, we are managing people, so you have to understand people. So everything that relates to managing and working with people, as it does with working in different cultures, is about understanding. For example, there are two extreme types of behavior between Latin and Anglo-Saxons. The first are followers of speech, others are likely to listen. If that is a cultural sort of characteristics, then of course it's affecting the way we conduct our project management skills. Latinos tend to generalize, while Anglo-Saxons are very analytical. You think that is true? Sounds like that. Or we can actually relate to that. Latinos have great spontaneity. How do you pronounce this? Spontaneity. No. Spontaneity. While Anglo-Saxons show a remarkable self-control. Why would that be? What's the cost? Let's say, what's the pros and cons of both sides? Why is it good to be spontaneous? New ideas. A project manager who is very, very spontaneous is likely to, is more dynamic, sorry. He's also likely to create an atmosphere where others also become dynamic and spontaneous and sort of creative. So he's likely to want to have sort of kind of a creative session in his group, while the other one is more fixed, more sort of controlled. No, we should not be spontaneous. We have to stick to plan, stick to regulations, and so on. Of course, as in any discussion with culture, you should never generalize. So it does not mean that we cannot find an analytical Latin or Anglo-Saxon with spontaneity. That is, of course, always the case. We should never generalize. But I've also found this in the same paper, where they have actually divided countries into certain groups with certain preferences. So Japanese, Taiwanese, and Brazilians would like face-to-face analytical discussion at milestones in the project period. So face-to-face would be quite important. And this brings sort of recalls question on discussion about Japanese as very sort of formal, accurate. Everything is about sort of agreeing on content, etc. Hungary and India, written status reports, fixed intervals. The Netherlands and Germany, detailed progress reports, fixed intervals. Do you relate to that? Detailed, very detailed progress reports and fixed intervals. There is a progress meeting at certain date, and you cannot fix that. You cannot change it, and so on. Everything is sort of captured and fixed. Australia, United States, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and Sweden, they would like to focus on continuous phone updates with written backups. So you can see if this is, and this is based on research by the author, you can see that we can actually, if we dig into it, we can actually group countries and group people into sort of certain groups where characteristics as a project manager are different based on which culture you come from, which country you come from. So I thought this was an interesting sort of, let's say, addition to what we are talking about. But if I find something really, and I will continue digging and Googling, if I find something really interesting concerning the countries that you're from, I will bring it up again. And please, if you also do find something, let me know. Okay. So this was just kind of a little twist on the cultural discussion. Now, project management structures. When we have different types of projects, we have long projects, we have short projects, we have big ones and small ones, and of course they demand a different approach, they demand different structure. Sometimes you don't need a certain fixed, let's say, project manager from an outside. You need to have someone within the organization identified as a project manager, but you don't need to have a formal sort of complicated structure. I need to draw up here something which we'll actually come back to many times in this discussion. When we talk about functional structure, we are basically talking about an organizational chart where the boxes are representing functions. This could be production manager, marketing manager, sales and service manager, and then this could be, export manager. This is the CEO or the managing director, and here is the office, the finance, etc. So functional, everything we talk about today when we refer to a functional system, we are actually talking about this. And we have, in this case, 4 functional managers. You can also think about the value chain. If this would be the primary activities in a value chain, production, marketing, sales, and export, something like that. When we make a kind of a when we combine the control of a project between all these, there is a danger of lack of control, lack of ownership. No one really owns the project. It is just meant to be organized by all those functional managers, but no one really owns it. And that is maybe one of the biggest problems if you don't have a fixed structure about how to implement a project. If the staff members, if the team doesn't feel that there is an ownership, they are kind of lost, and uncertainty is, as in any other situation, very bad for productivity and bad for job satisfaction, etc. So it's also a question about what kind of needs does this project include? Do we need a lot of people? Do we need a lot of equipment? Do we need a lot of technical equipment or outside consultancy? Do we have that in the organization? What is the need of the organization at that point in time? Maybe the organization is very busy with delivering a big order, and then comes about a project which the management wants to focus on, and that doesn't fit with the workload on the organization. So you have to sort of balance the way you implement and the sort of structure you use. You have to balance it based on the needs of the project with the needs of the organization. Otherwise you lose completely control. So you need some kind of a system. You need some kind of a structure and a system to take on this difficult task of starting and implementing a project. And that is where we talk about the 3 different project management structures. We talk about functional structure, which is this one here, where you have the organizational chart, you have the different functions, and the functions are actually running the project. Come back to that. You have dedicated project teams. That sounds like an interesting thing. You have a group of people who work together for a longer or shorter period of time on only one particular project. And then you have a matrix structure which is combining the sort of elements from the both. Now, when would you choose functional structure and when would you choose dedicated project team? That's difficult to say. It depends on the nature of the project, depends on the organization, how it is manned, what kind of capabilities it has in terms of knowledge, expertise and manpower, and etc. But mainly it depends on the nature of the project and what else is happening in the organization, and of course the strategy of the company. How many of you have worked in a dedicated project team where there was only one project on your desk for a certain period of time? 1, 2, 3. What was the most difficult? We come back to this discussion later, but just to sort of open up. What was the most difficult thing you experienced working on a dedicated project, in a dedicated project team? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yeah. You were taking out of that. You were taking out of daily work, put aside on a certain, and focused only on a certain project. So isolation, I think, is a very common feeling. Good point. Anything else? What about sadness when the thing was over? or were you happy to go back? Okay, we'll come back to that, because many team members feel sad when a project is ending. They sort of miss their team members, and they miss the atmosphere, etc. Okay, so the three structures. We have on one side dedicated project team, we have on the other functional organization, and then in between trying to match and sort of use best of both, basically. We have matrix arrangement, which can be divided into three different versions: strong, balanced, and weak. Now, the first one is the functional project management structure or an organization. And this is quite common in quite many companies who are running, you can say, different kinds of projects where you need to have all kinds of inputs from one time to another. Basically, you agree that a certain group of people from different functions form a project team, not on a constant basis. They are occupied in their different functions all the day. They still keep their sort of original work, but they also have this as one of their projects. So maybe once a month or once every second week there is a project meeting, and this is just one part of what they're doing. Now, coordination is maintained through normal management channels. So basically, the coordination of the project is done between the managers of the functions. At management meetings, for example, could be every first Tuesday in a month, or every first Monday, or whatever. Once a month, the management team meets to discuss the overall business, and then they bring up the discussion, okay, how is this particular project going? And then they can sort of take status on what is the marketing people adding to the project, is it enough for the sales and service people, etc. But there is no one person who controls this project. It just lies somewhere between all of the functional managers. If it is, however, a marketing project, then it's more likely that the marketing manager is giving the responsibility to be kind of the leader of the project. But he's not a project leader. He's not a project manager, because the management lies within the functional channels. This is used when one functional area, as I said, maybe the marketing, plays a dominant role in completing the project or has a dominant interest in the outcome or the success of the project. Now, we can see on this photo here, or this model here, that here we have the functions. First of all, of course, the overhead. And the project coordination is sort of marked by these dots here surrounding the functions. So that is where the coordination, the organization, and the structure of the project is decided and controlled. And then underneath, you have the different sort of functions within the different departments. Within engineering, you have electronic engineering, software, mechanical, etc. Within marketing, you would have customer service, domestic sales, international sales. And depending on what kind of a project this is, the marketing manager can actually pull people from his own department into the project as needed. That is one of the benefits. You can actually bring in the best and the, you can say, the knowledge that you have at all times. So it is kind of a flexible in that sense. Okay, here we have the positive and the negative sides. What you need to do before the exam is to be familiar with those three different forms of running projects and understand the pros and cons, basically. What is good about it, what is negative. And the first positive thing is that there is no change in structure. You know, this is basically you just continue working in the marketing department as before. But as I said, you have to spend certain times per month on this particular project, and you have to attend meetings maybe every other week, etc. So it's flexibility in use of staff. As I just said, you can also bring in those who are, good knowledge on the project. And you can actually bring them in, and then once they have sort of taken part in their particular field of the project, then you can sort of dismiss them, and they don't have to be a part of the project again, if not necessary. So you have access to in-depth expertise, especially if the scope is narrow. We come back to the discussion about scope later on. And easy post-project transition. Never forget that even a smallest project has to be finished, has to be closed, and has to be formally formally finished, basically. And this one is easy because, you're already working in the marketing department, and when the project is finished, you just continue as before. So there's no big change in your life, basically. On the negative side, there is lack of focus. People working in the marketing, so let's stick a bit to the marketing department. People working in the marketing department, they have all kinds of tasks already. They are focusing on sales, they are focusing on a new marketing campaign, they are sort of coming up with new customer relations management system, whatever they are doing, they are focusing on their own sort of tasks. And then suddenly comes about a project which they have to address and they have to attend to because the managing director of the marketing department and the board asks them to do so or tells them to do so. But because they have so much other things on their plate, the focus on this particular project is limited. And sometimes it's lack of focus, actually. And, of course, poor integration. Functional specialists within each function, they always think about their sort of own thing first, and then they address the project. This might be a pet project organized or, let's say, asked for by the management or by the board, and it's not yours. And then you don't focus on that. You don't give it priority because you're so busy with other things. It's a slower process. It's a slower implementation than if you have a special or a dedicated project team, because all the communication has to go through the functional level. And remember, they meet only once a month, or at the management meetings, or of course they can, make informal meetings. But generally speaking, the communication is a bit complex, but it's mainly slow. And then, of course, it's a lack of ownership, which I talked about. It's not our idea. It's not our project. And that is a very dangerous atmosphere if that sort of starts to build up in a company. If the people working in the marketing department start to feel negatively about the project just because it isn't their idea, and just because it isn't a marketing project in itself, because the marketing manager is not the project manager, he's just one of the functional managers. So there are negative sides to this kind of a setup. The second one, and this you have seen in many American movies, especially movies concerning some legal issues. You've seen these characters working with boxes of material. They have to study it. They go into a certain room, and that's where they spend their hours and days, and they eat Chinese food and takeaway and whatever. And that is typical for a dedicated project team. They have their own space, they have their own focus, and they are only working on one particular project. And it's a separate unit. As you said, you're taking away isolation. You're taking away from your own previous department, from your colleagues, and you put aside together with others because of some reasons, hopefully professional reasons only, but last time we talked about that there are also internal politics or political reasons. Maybe you're the favorite staff member of the company in the eyes of someone, and that's why you're always getting the most interesting projects. But hopefully it's a professional background for asking you to be a part of the dedicated project team. So it's a separate unit. That's the first difference. And then the second one, it's a project where you have to have a full-time project manager. Most likely an outsider, someone who comes from outside the company, is hired because of skills as project manager to organize and implement that particular project. And he or she gets a dedicated team of workers. We will cover later in another chapter how many workers should be ideal and how to pick team members and so on. But let's just say 10 team members and then you hire a project manager from outside. And the interface between the parent organization and the project team will change, will be different. You might not even be in the same building, because this might be a very sensitive project. It might be a very, let's stick to the marketing department a bit longer, and let's say it's a new marketing campaign. No one, absolutely no one, can hear about it. No one must know, or no one should know. So 10 people plus a project manager and maybe 1 or 2 seniors are the only people that know about this particular project. So you're not even within your own company. They rented a flat or a office building or whatever, or office, so that you had a separate location. And that, of course, sounds a bit different. So here you can see it on the drawing. You are actually taking away from the functional part, and this is your team. You have a project manager, and you have project team members. And this is what we call a dedicated project team. Now, the positive sides are quite many, actually, because this is a very interesting form, and effective in many ways. It's simple, in a way. You just choose 10 people, you take them out of the organization, you put them outside the office, into a new office building or new office facility. You hire a project manager, and that's it. Maybe you need computers, you need printers and such. No problem. Technical issues. So it's pretty simple in a way, and it's fast compared to the functional structure where you are loaded with a lot of other tasks. This time you only have one task, and that is this particular project, and nothing else. You can work in the morning hours, you can work in the daytime, or even in the night. Just depends on when you sort of are, let's say, more creative. And you can actually manage to build up. It's not a given thing, though. We'll come back to that in chapter 11, I think. But you can have a well-focused team. You can actually build up an extremely strong sort of unit, a team of people who are focused on the same target, the same goal, the same vision for a longer or shorter period of time. That can be very effective, very powerful group of people. You can bring in specialists from different functions so that you are trying to build up a kind of an elite group. Best knowledge, best experience, best expertise in all functions inside the whole, in one team. So you try to build that up by forming a project called dedicated project team. The negative sides, first of all, it's very expensive. First of all, you hire a project manager who demands his or her salary and all the cost, etc. And then cost of renting office facilities, cost of travel, and so on. And sometimes these teams are given extra benefits. There is an interesting case in the textbook on an internal conflict created within Apple because one of the teams became a bit too sort of occupied with themselves. They were flying business class or first class, but no one else in the company. They were giving extra sort of attention, more than the others. So it created a we-them kind of a atmosphere. And you can take a look at in the textbook. It's quite interesting. This is it sounds a bit stupid if we talk about it like that, but it's really easy to fall into. This is a trap easy to fall into. If you make too much out of a project and you start sort of what shall we say, making the project team a bit too occupied with themselves, then you have danger of creating this kind of a atmosphere, which is very bad for the organization. Has anyone experienced this? Anyone felt, oh, they are always getting the nice bits and pieces of what we are doing. They are always the, How many of you have, for example, felt in your in a company where you've been working that there are always 2 or 3 salespeople who are attending all the exhibitions abroad. They're going to the nice places, and the only thing when they come back, they leave some chocolate in the cantina, maybe Macintosh or something, 1 box, and then you start hearing about the nice dinner they had there, and this great thing there, and so on, and you start feeling angry because you never go anywhere. This builds up, creates tension, and then when you have a staff night out, it explodes. After a few beers, it goes all down the drain, and you start fighting with each other and so on, as was the case in the Apple story. Yes, I have. I've seen it, and I also experienced it. From both sides, actually. I've been in the position of traveling and feeling the others, nagging and sort of being angry and talking behind my back, but I've also been in the other part. No. No, we should be able to solve this as grown-up people. But this is, more than anything else, this is a management task. The manager has to make sure that those who travel, they must also show respect to those who never travel by, for example, writing reports, explaining why was I going to this conference, why was I going to this exhibition, how did it go, and give thanks to everyone who sort of helped. I was, for example, for many years working in a business where we would ship out machinery. I didn't pack the machines. The others did. And thanks to them and how they packed it, it always arrived safely, and it was, all the instructions were there, and that helped me to put it up and show it. So you have to give credit to those who participated, because it's never one-man show, even though there is few that go to meet the customers. So this is a management task, to make sure that those who travel, those who are in this position, are giving credit to the others. And by writing a travel report, you're also building up knowledge within the company about markets, about communication with clients, about agents, and so on and so forth. So it's building up a market information system, as well as cooling down this possible or potential conflict area. Now, there is also, at the same time, you can actually pick out the best specialists within the company. It might not be enough. If the project objective is very specific and demanding, you might not actually have all the knowledge needed. So that is a negative thing, because you might end up with a technical sort of expertise. You might actually bring in, or have to bring in, outside people to fill in. But that's, then you are not only covering the team members with, internal people, but outside as well. And then the crazy part, post-project transition, is the sensitive part. When everything is finished, and you who have been flying differently, eating at restaurants, having allowances which the others don't have, and you also have to, and then suddenly, when everything is finished, you have to go back. You have to go back to your department, where the others are, who have been there for the last 12 months. You have to start eating again at the cantina, etc. But of course, you will miss, the 9 others. Let's say it's all, continue the group of 10. So you will, of course, miss the other team members. I mean, if you're working on something and only one project for a long time, you, of course, build up friendship. You build up kind of a culture within the team. Openness and trust, and of course you will miss it. So that is why it is very, very important, absolutely crucial, in the beginning of every project, to make everyone realize that one day, 10 months from now, or 6 months from now, or whatever, this will end, and then you will go back. You have to make it clear, and we come back to that in the chapter on closing. And then the final one is, we are going to jump onto this one. The final one is the matrice organizations. It is kind of a hybrid structure where you overlay the normal functional structure, this one, on the number of projects that you have. And this relates to companies that, like engineering companies, consulting companies, those who are running tens and tens and tens of projects, hundreds of projects maybe, over a period of a year, with a large number of staff. The problem here is that this is a bit complicated. Dedicated project team is very simple. This is also in a way simple, but maybe diffusing for many, or confusing for many staff members. But this structure, the matrice organizational structure, is a bit complicated. Mainly because now you have, now you have two chains of command, as you will see in the model, in the drawing later on. You actually have to report. If you are a member of the marketing department, you have, of course, your senior marketing director as your first boss, right? But then, in this kind of a project structure, you have also a project manager, whom you also have to report to. It doesn't have to be this one. It doesn't have to be the managing director of the marketing department. So you have actually, quite often, two bosses to reply to, or to report to, and that is really, really confusing for many staff members. You can just imagine having two bosses, taking orders from two people, informing two people at all times about progress and things like that. So quite often this is a temporary structure for certain sort of projects, and then it sort of develops into something more long-term aimed and more related to either functional or dedicated project teams. So let's take a look at the drawing and see how that looks like. Here on this side here you have, as before, you have the functions, the same functions we have been talking about, and under the functions you have departments or let's say expertise levels or areas of expertise, and then you have one person here who is the director of projects, the overall director or coordinator of all projects in this particular company. And then you have project manager A, B, C, and could be quite a long list in a big company. So if you are in the marketing department and you are in the quality department, you are this person here. You have to reply, sorry, marketing is here. You are in the, let's say, customer service. You are this person here. You have to reply or report to your marketing manager, but also to project manager B, because you are actually on this particular project. So the circles and the numbers are indicating from which function team members are coming, just to show how it works. So this is an interesting form, but a bit complicated compared to the others. And let's take a look at how it sort of relates in terms of pros and cons. It is sometimes quite efficient because you are sharing resources. There is a lot of learning effect in this. You're gaining a lot of expertise from all these functional members here, gained by the project manager, etc. So there's a lot of learning effect for the organization, and there is a stronger project focus than, for example, running a functional structure, because you have a project manager. That is always giving the project an extra or a stronger focus. It's easier to finish, easier to close down, because you are, as you can see here, you continue working in your own department. There's no change in that once the project is over. This person here finalizes the project, closes it down. There is a lesson learned with everyone involved, and then you are off the hook for that particular project. So it's easy to sort of finish, it's easy to close down. Flexible, you can be flexible in the way you utilize people and resources, etc., because you're not taking things outside of the company. It's all within the same functions, but sort of under a bit more control than this one here, because you have a formal project manager. The negative sides, as I said and indicated, you have too many bosses. You have more bosses than in the others, and that is confusing. And you can actually start seeing the potential disagreements and sort of conflicts between project managers and functional managers, etc. Who is when there are two to make decisions, there is danger of a bit power play, etc. So you might have infighting. It is stressful to have too many bosses, and this is also a bit complicated structure in terms of speed of communication. Yes, you might need to do that. So this is a bit complicated structure compared to the others. Read about it. The textbook describes it quite well. Also the three versions of matrix structure, the balanced, the strong, and the weak. Read about that and be familiar with the main characteristics. I will not go into any sort of much details, because this is this is, as I said in the beginning, it's an overview, it's an opening. You have to be familiar with the main sort of structures, but in the future time, when you start working as project manager, you of course go into the details. And then, which system is the best? Which system is the best? When should you use the functional structure? When should you actually use dedicated project team? And when would you use the matrix structure? Well, that depends on what kind of project you have, what kind of organization you have. What are the needs of the project, and what are the needs of the organization? Does it match when you are running the project, or do you have a problem implementing that particular project? It also has to do with linked the autonomy and the authority of the project manager. What kind of a project manager do you need for this particular project? Do you need someone who is extremely strong and powerful? Do you have that within your organization? Do you need to hire it? How important is project management to the success of the company? What kind of resources do you have? And so on and so forth. So take a look at the project considerations, the 7 factors explained in the textbook. How much autonomy does a project need in order to be successful? What needs to be there? What needs to be in place for a project to become successful? Now, the trend is that most companies would start running projects like this, through a functional structure. Maybe sometimes appoint someone within the functions to be a project manager in a smaller project because of background, educational background, or some capabilities this person has to do to run the project. But then, when things start getting sort of tougher and the competition increases and you are taking on bigger projects, then you actually will have to start using what we say mix and match and sort of try to find your own structure. Sometimes you might use dedicated project teams, sometimes you might even use this one, and sometimes you might use the matrix structure. So it's never a clear line. It's never one sort of correct answer. It depends on organizational factors and the project itself. Any questions on this? Yes. Yep. No. That's a good question. If I point it out, but don't cover it myself, then you should read it. If I point it out, of course you should read the book. That's rule number 1. But you're absolutely right. There is a lot of stuff in the book that I am not going into details of. So you can also use my slides as a guideline. What my emphasis is where I put my emphasis. But if I mention something especially that you should take a look, then you should. But it's a good question because and quite frequent question. What is important for the exam? There's a lot of stuff in the textbook which we are not covering in details, but I still try to have my slides to cover, say the biggest part of the chapters. I also, in the beginning, when I when I designed the slides and the course, I used also some, let's say, guidelines from the authors, but I found it more, what shall I say, easier, at least, to make my own. but some of this is based on guidelines from the authors. They give out or they hand out a kind of a structure for each chapter, what is the most important things. Sometimes I agree, sometimes I add something else to it. But it's a good question. Anything else? Okay, then we take a break, and we will be back in 10 minutes to finalize the chapter and talk a bit about the culture of the organization. Yeah, you repeat from them. Yeah. Yeah, the leaders are like a benchmark or role models. Yeah. Just for the off-campus students, we are back in after the break, talking about what is culture, what is company culture, and what kind of how you actually create it. We talked about culture is behavior, it's habits, and something that sort of we can see in others, and we start repeating, whether that is the leader as a role model or other staff members. Okay, yeah, I think it's all right. It's all correct. So what we're talking about here, we have on one side structure of a company, authority, responsibility, and connections. And then on the other side, we have the cultural things like norms, beliefs, and values, and the meaning of things. And this all then has to match so that we can work together, we can solve problems, we can innovate, and we can implement. Culture is, of course, a huge area of discussion. Culture, what is culture? We will come back to that, but this, I think, has been maybe undervalued for many reasons. Why we build up a strong company culture, especially when we talk about project management. What kind of a company culture shall we build up? What kind of a sort of elements or what kind of a character actually among people shall we seek for when we hire new people as project managers? We come back to that later in another chapter. But organizational culture is very helpful for everyone, not only the project managers, but it's also helpful for everyone else in the company, because it provides a sense of identity for its members. You know, you feel you belong to this particular company because the company culture is, you can say it's strong. It's based on well, the values of a company. Sometimes are meant to sort of explain what is the company culture. The values could be knowledge, could be service-mindedness or service orientation, could be proactiveness, being always the first one to, seek for new solutions. So values, sometimes put up on the wall of a company after strategic planning weekend or strategic planning process are sometimes meant to capture the culture's characteristics. What do we as individuals in the company stand for? If, for example, service-mindedness, being extremely service-minded is one of the values of the company, it would mean that every staff member will always try his or her best to solve the problem for the client. It would never say, no, sorry, we don't have this at the moment. Just go somewhere else. That would not be an answer suitable for someone who has that as a value, because the character of the company is that, yes, we will try to solve your problems. At worst, we can direct you to someone who can. We never leave you empty-handed. That could be one of the things. Okay, secondly, it generates commitment and a reason for members of the culture of the company to devote their energy and loyalty to the organization. How many of you have been working for a company you actually questions, why on earth am I working for this company? It's not a nice feeling. Has anyone experienced that? We will not tell, we will not even know, so you can be honest. Okay, well, luckily, maybe no one has experienced it, because it's a very bad feeling. But then I turn the question around. Have you felt the opposite? Have you felt so geared for working for that particular company that you would actually, work longer hours, maybe say, you don't have to pay me salary the next month, just wait. I know you're running short on cash. It's no problem. Have you felt like that? Maybe not. Let's skip the money question, but we all need money. But, the sort of the spirit, you're so focused, you're so really, what shall we say, into this company, basically. Anyone? Yeah? You felt so happy at the workplace. Okay. Well, just think about it, because that is, if you feel like that, either if you have or if you will in the future, which I hope and I'm sure you will, if you feel like that, then the management has managed to sort of initiate that within you. It has managed to share the vision with you, or you agree to it, you want to help to gain goals, you want to help to the company to reach their objectives and be successful. So you feel you are allowed to bring out the best in you. You are given responsibility, so that you return back with energy and loyalty. Company culture also helps to legitimize. This is one of the terrible words. Legitimize. Yeah, it's in all the mafia movies. It's a legitimate business. Anyway, to legitimize the management systems of the organizations. And then it helps to clarify authority. Where is the responsibility? What kind of a structure is there? Who is the boss? Should not be a question, but sometimes, if the boss steps too, let's say, eagerly down, or let's say opens up too much to his personality, then he can actually lose a bit of the respect as a boss and become too much of a friend or an equal partner. Because, in my opinion, a boss of any company has to be the one who always is respected for having and bearing the final responsibility of whatever happens in the company. But he or she should also be such a good person that you should not be afraid of that person. You should feel easy talking to the person, bringing up your problems, but also your ideas and suggestions. But there should never be a question who is the boss. So crossing that line, it sometimes happens at the staff meetings, the staff evenings, but crossing the line is not good. So most importantly, having a clear organizational culture clarifies and reinforces standards of behavior. So a clear company culture says, this is how we are, this is what we stand for, this is how we work, this is how we behave, and also this is how we do not behave. We don't harass others. We don't talk negatively about others. We are, cooperative in spirit, and so on and so on. So a clear structure will tell the workers all this. And set the standards for behavior, and helps to create a social order within the organization. I think I told you last time that I once took on a project where we had 33 staff members or something like that, and we basically should have fired 30 or 31 of them. Because there was no order, there was no social behavior, there were no standards of behavior, no social order within the company. There were groups of people in the company fighting each other, damaging the company, damaging the output, damaging everything. So there was no company culture, no organizational culture. So keep this in mind. This is maybe the most important things concerning company culture. Of course, it does all this, but it sort of sets the standards of behavior. How do we behave in a company? Now, there are many ways to realize what kind of a company culture you have in a company where you are working in, or where you want to work in, or where, maybe your counterparts or your competitors. You might actually want to sort of learn a bit about that. And the textbook lists up those items here. Oops. I just got a new one, and this one is much quicker than the old one. List up these items here: member identity, team emphasis, management focus, etc., etc. By realizing the nature and the meaning of those points, and sort of maybe valuing how the company is actually doing in terms of member identity or team emphasis or control or risk tolerance, reward criteria, if you put dots on this, you can actually draw up a picture of the organizational culture. What are the characteristics? We come back to that issue. You can also identify through various means what is the organizational culture. You can study the physical character of an organization just by sort of seeing how reading about it, for example, the first thing, reading about it, Googling it. How many of you, if you want to know something about a company, you just Google and you go to the website and you read about the About Us part, the vision statements, and you already have a feeling, right? You've all done that, I guess. On the website? Absolutely, yeah. That can often be the case, and I think we discussed earlier that sometimes mission statements, like we talked about last time, mission statements are put up. Sometimes it looks like a sort of collection of fancy words, but doesn't say anything. Doesn't say anything about the strength or the core competence of the company. So you're right, it's sometimes quite general. But you can actually study the physical character of the organization. You can take a look at the website. You can read about it. Are they giving something to charity? Are they included in negative press? Are they having financial problems? This could also give you indication of what kind of structure it is. Observe how people interact within the organization. If you sit a meeting or attend a meeting with 2 or 3 from the same organization, how do they talk to each other? Do they interrupt each other constantly? Do they seem friendly and respect each other, etc.? If there are 2 guys, 1 woman, is she allowed to talk? I was just checking whether you are awake. But this is one of the things. What kind of a sort of spirit is there in the company? And then you can listen to stories, which is, one way of really sort of understanding, but it's also a very dangerous one, because stories, as we know, are not often true. And especially in those days with social media, when things start floating on the internet, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to stop it, and quite often and frequently it's not true what you actually read there. So, but these are the sort of ways you can actually go to try to read about and try to understand and sort of get feeling for a culture in an organization. Maybe without even belonging to it, but just from the outside. And why is this impossible? Why is this, I repeat, why is this important? It is actually possible. Why is this important? Why would you sit down and spend half a day reading about a company, going through their website, maybe talking to someone who knows this particular company, calling them, see how they reply on the phone, or if they, are quick to answer, or things like that? Why would you do that? Well, one reason is that as a project manager, you are bound to start somewhere working with a lot of companies, a lot of people. You might actually be just analyzing one of your suppliers, one of your counterparts, or one of your clients. So if you have a new client, you might want to know a bit about what is this, how is the organizational culture within this company I'm supposed to work for. So there are many reasons for why you should actually do that. And project managers, they have to be able to read and speak the organizational culture. Now that sounds a bit crazy to put out like that, but you have to have a feeling for it. You have to be, let's say, man reader in that sense. You have to sort of capture the characteristics of persons, because a project manager is more is a human, is a man sort of, I'm lacking the word here, works with people and has to feel what kind of personality they have more than anything else. Not only staff members and team members, but also clients and other stakeholders. So you also have to read a bit the culture of the company that you're working with, because you have to develop strategies, plans, and responses that are likely to be understood and accepted, and you also have to understand what your client is asking you to do. So it's very important that you have a good feeling for what kind of organizational culture you are facing, whether as a supplier, stakeholder, or a client. And here you have actually a picture if you have sort of graded or put up, do they score high in particular criteria. And just take a look at that in the textbook and sort of get the feeling for why and how you could use this model to measure some characteristics of an organizational culture. We will go much, much deeper into discussion about culture, but not now. We will do that when we talk about international projects. But this is just to connect the discussion about culture with the discussion about how do we implement projects and how it is to, how can this vary between companies. Discussion points. What is more important, structure or culture for successfully completing projects? How do organizational structure affect the implementation of projects? What is culture? What is organizational culture? How can you measure it? Why is it important to realize it? Etc. Once again, you have to think about the discussion points at the end of every chapter so that we can, or you can prepare for the exam next week. Okay. Then we will go on to chapter 4. And the first thing we do is actually to take a look at the video, and I will make a break in the recording because I don't think the sound will be captured by the system, and the off-campus students will see this video later on. Okay, back from the break. This video, which I will show to the off-campus students later, was actually a kind of an opening to some of the terms that we are going to be using in the next chapter, which is defining the project. Work breakdown structure is very, very important. One of the things that you have to be absolutely clear on. Project scope, statement of work, etc. What was talked about in terms of critical path, we discuss in a different chapter, but getting the overview, defining the work breakdown structure is one part of the steps we need to take when defining the project. And that's why I wanted to show you this video. 16 months, 15, 16 months. It took 10 months in real operation. Only 10% above budget or past budget. That's pretty good, isn't it? Huge task. Weather was interfering, all kinds of things. Huge task. Anyway, so for the remaining part of the class today, we are going to cover chapter 4. Then I will show you and go through the Morocco case, and then hopefully some discussion after that. But first, defining the project. And this is a very, very important chapter, because this one is really setting the tone for all the remaining work when it comes to project management. If the defining of the project isn't properly done, if it is like the Icelanders' way of using only 10% for preparation, then you are actually heading for trouble. The chapter overview: defining project scope, establishing project priorities, creating the work breakdown structure, which you just heard about. And you also heard about work packages, which are the elements of the work breakdown structure. Integrating the work breakdown structure with the organization. Basically, the work breakdown structure tells you what needs to be done in order to fulfill the whole project, and the organizational breakdown structure tells you who is actually going to do what. And then you need to code it, and you need to create a project communication plan. Rachel, for example, one of the cases you have gone through already, she was communicating with a lot of stakeholders. For a bigger project, you need a communication plan, which actually tells you whom to talk to, how, what kind of information, on which basis, how frequently, etc. Okay. First step is defining the project. Set the stage for developing a project plan. And this is something the project manager, who has been already appointed or hired, will actually have to be and bear the responsibility of, together with the client, with a representative from the client. Why is that necessary? Why not just have the project manager and some of his team members finish and define the project scope? Why would you need someone from the client? I mean, the client comes to you and says, can you build a house? Yes. Okay, deliver it in 10 months. Yes? Yes? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The client is paying. There has to be specifications. What kind of a house? A house is not always just a house. So that has to be very clear from the beginning. Not only so that you can build the house that the client is or has asked you to do, but also so that you as a project manager can be sort of on the safe side when it comes to changes in the scope. If the client comes back to you after, let's say, 3 months and says, I want a bigger house, then you have to go back and say, well, we defined this as the project scope in the beginning. And on that, we based our assumption and risk analysis and cost budgeting. So if you want a bigger house, we need to change the scope. So it's also a question for the project manager to sort of, in a professional manner, outline the whole structure, and a very, very important thing, agreeing on it with the client. When you have done the definition of the project scope, you and the client, you have to agree. Okay, so this is the kind of house we want, with all the specifications, no more, no less. And then you can start. So it is setting the stage for developing a project plan. It is kind of a definition of the end result. When you define the project, you're basically describing what you want to have as an outcome. You know, once again, the house. You're describing what kind of a house, with all the specifications, etc. A poorly defined scope or a mission is therefore the most frequent barrier to success. If you cannot describe this clearly, how can you build a house? It's just as when you're doing your final essay. If you have no specific idea or haven't fixed, idea in your head about what to write, well, you can write anything or nothing. So the definition should be developed under the direction of the project manager, who is responsible for seeing to that there is an agreement with the client. Once again, project manager is responsible for this together with the client. The scope should define the results to be achieved in specific, tangible, and measurable terms. Why is that necessary? Why is it necessary? Why not just to say house with this kind of flooring and something like that? Why would it be specific, tangible, measurable, so that you can at all times measure progress? So that the client can at all times call you and say, well, how are we doing in terms of time, money, etc. Or you can actually call him and say, well, we are actually now running a bit late, so we need extra time or we need more money. So this must be done extremely well. There is a saying, something like proper planning prevents poor project outcome, something like that. So proper planning is the key. And for for successful definition of the project, you might actually want to have a kind of a checklist, a project scope checklist. First of all, the project objective, key questions: what is it that we are going to be doing, when, how much, what are the deliverables, what is the expected outcome or the output over the life of the project, and then what are the milestones? What would be the milestones when we are building a house? When the foundation is there, clearly, okay? Then we would build the walls and the roof, and when the roof is on top of the walls and the windows, and nothing inside, but just a closed kind of a box with roofs, then that's a milestone. Fåkelt. You know, you can start doing the interior. Things like that. You actually have to define what kind of milestones you are going to be focusing on. And agree with your client that milestones are significant events that occur at certain point in time. And if you plan when to be done with the foundation, the walls and the roof, etc., you have once again time to measure progress. Technical requirements. What do you need? This must also be defined in details, so that you know when you need what kind of equipment, when you need technical assistance, when you need extra knowledge, etc. You need to be quite firm on this. Limits and exclusions, what is not included? Well, not included in the house is a triple garage or a swimming pool. That's not included in the package. Something like that. Could be whatever. Reviews with customers. Why is it important to list this out in the beginning? Why not just say, as you go along, give them a call and say, well, we should maybe have a lunch meeting and I'll tell you how we're doing? Why should you actually review with customers based on a plan? Why should you have sort of... Well, one thing is that you need to keep the customer informed at all times. You need to ensure that the customer is sort of firstly realizing how you are going to go about, how you are going to implement. And at all times, the customer should be able to ask you, how are we doing? So, this could be a longer list, could be different, but here you have at least some interesting and important checklists or points in the checklist that you can use to help you define the scope. Now, in the video you saw or you heard that they talked about statement of work. It's also called project charter. It's basically a piece of paper defining and explaining what is supposed to be done. And then you put your name on it, and that is something that you have agreed on. Okay, this is the definition. In the Morocco case, which you will hear about later today, I was working with, obviously, many Moroccan people. Meetings were extremely chaotic. First of all, there was never any peace. 2 or 3 people were talking at the same time, even smoking. Then secretaries would come in with all kinds of papers to be signed. So there was no, in my mind at least, there was no structure. The meetings were chaotic. So I figured out, and then, they were talking Arabic and French and then English. And then they would ask me, after being, talking in French, they would ask me, what do you think, Þorgeir? I don't speak French or Arabic, so I didn't really understand what they were talking about. And in all this chaotic sort of atmosphere, I thought to myself, okay, how can I be sure that I get something out of these meetings? Something. So at the end of every meeting, I actually said, okay, so, gentlemen, if I may summarize. So I summarized my understanding of the meeting. I said, okay, are we in agreement of that this is what we have discussed? This is what we have discussed. We are going to do this for the next week. You are going to deliver this to me. You are going to deliver that. And I am going to provide this. And if they agreed, then we put our name on a piece of paper where this was all listed out. So this was the only thing I had, basically, to tell me and my superiors back in Iceland that, yes, we are gaining some progress. This meeting actually resulted in decisions on as you can see here. Because if I would not have had this piece of paper, then I would, not be able to explain what happens at the meeting. So that is also a good rule. Pretty much in line with, you can say, the sort of statements and the project charter. You might want to finish meetings, especially meetings with, larger number of people involved in the project, with some kind of a summary. Do we agree on this? Why is it important? First of all, you know what has been discussed and agreed upon. And then secondly, if someone says 3 months later, no, I never agreed on this, this is wrong, then you can go back to the statement and say, sorry, you did, we signed. It is to protect you, it is to help you in a way. Scope creep, that is one of the things that you need to be familiar with as well. And a scope creep is likely to happen if you define the project poorly in the beginning, or if you have a client who isn't really sure of what he wants. Then you have a situation where the scope is constantly being changed by the client, constantly new ideas, new requests, new demands, and you remember the golden rule: the success of a project is a happy client. Not directly worded like this, but that's the meaning. Of course, you try to fulfill the needs of the client. But it's very difficult if the client isn't really fixed in the beginning on what he or she wants. So a scope creep is the tendency for a project scope to be extended over time due to changing requirements, specifications, and priorities. The case in the video was actually not requested by a client. It was requested by the board, or let's say it was a decision by the board of the company to build the tallest roller coaster in the world and the fastest. Anyway, let's take a look at another video and then we take a break. And I'll make a break now in the recording. This is also something I will show to the off-campus students later. The scope isn't well defined. Okay, back from this quick break, just to take a look at this video. Scope creep is something you have to keep in mind. I hope this short video helps you remember what it is about. But it's a part of a poorly defined scope. That is what happens. We have a case upcoming which you will have to read and work on in class, which is also about scope creep, because this is important. It is important to avoid this from happening. Why would it be so important? Why don't we want to have a scope creep in our project? First of all, it's very, very expensive. Constant changes, constant additions, new requirements, new wishes by the client, and that is increasing cost and probably ruining the timetable as well, as in this case. Okay, let's take a quick break now for 10 minutes and then be back to finalize the chapter, and then we go on to the Morocco case. Okay. We are back from a quick break, and we are now talking about the second point when it comes to defining a project. And that is establishing project priorities. What is it that will be the main guideline in implementing the project? Remember, we have talked about quite often that there are trade-offs. You have to do trade-offs. You have three sort of main emphasis: people, resources, time, money, 3, 4. And you have to do, as a project manager, you have to do trade-offs. You have to make sure that you're balancing correctly. But sometimes you actually have to decide what will be the main priority of the project. And balancing all this defines the quality success of a project if you do it correctly. If you focus on, please, at the back, if you focus on what is really the nature of the project, what does it require to be successful, etc. So you, as a project manager, must actually define and understand the nature of priorities. Now, we talk about scope, time, and cost, and quality. That's what you are constantly sort of balancing, making trade-offs between. And we have also, to help us establish the project priorities, we can make use of this model here, where we have 3 new terms, something that is a constraint of the project, something that absolutely must be the main criteria, the main focus, what needs to be enhanced, if possible, what should be put, let's say, more focus on than anything else, and then what we can accept. Where actually can we accept to make trade-offs? Where can we accept to make, or let's say, achieve different situation than we set out with? Where can we give in, basically? So we talk about constraint, enhance, and accept, and in this particular case we are looking at, we talk about time, performance, and cost as the criterias. That criterias can be different from one project to another, but those sort of terms here are the same. What is it in the project that we enhance? What is it that is the constraint? And what is it that we accept? And now I want you to turn to someone close to you and discuss this exercise. You are in charge of organizing a dinner dance concert for a local charity on February 26th. The event needs to accommodate at least 60 people, and each ticket should generate at least $50 in profit. Develop a scope statement. You don't need to do that right now. For this project that contains examples of all the elements, what you need to do is to decide how to put the dots here. What is it that we should constrain or consider as a constraint in this case? What should we enhance? And where can we actually accept a change in our scope definition? So, please, discuss for a few minutes and then we will have an open discussion. Quickly, please. Yeah, you may have to turn to someone, find someone. What is a constraint? What can you enhance? And what can you accept? Or where can you accept to make trade-offs? Yes. You cannot put the 2 dots in one box. While the students work on this, I'm going to make a break for the off-campus students in the recording, and I'll come back once we have a solution. So, you have now discussed this among yourselves, and let's take an open discussion on this. What I asked you to do was just to fill in the dots, but the exercise requires a bit more though, which I wanted to go through with you instead of having you do it by yourselves. So if we would need to develop a scope statement, like we are now discussing, what should we include? First of all, the definition of the project, requirements, milestones, deliverables, milestones, etc. Basically the list we talked about in the beginning of the chapter. So, before we go to the dots, let's just take a look at what do we have. Okay, we have a project, we have a timeline. We are here now on the 23rd of January, and we have to deliver something on the 26th of February. Okay? In between, we need to do quite many things. For this to happen, and remember this is a charity thing, what's the characteristics of a charity thing? Have you been to one? Gala, dinner, dress, etc. Yeah, to certain topics, to certain parts. But what's sort of what is it that characterizes a charity event? To raise money. And how do we do that? Would this be in any ballroom or any place or any meeting room? No? It would be quite fancy, right? Upper class, big, sort of classy conditions or circumstances or surroundings, right? We would hire a big ballroom. Anyway, what needs to be done if these dots here, these stripes here are milestones? Because that's one of the things you need to do when you draw up a scope statement. What is, or define a project? What are the milestones? The main milestones you would need to do as of now until the 26th of February. Anyone? Yes. Sell tickets. Okay. Okay. Advertise. What else? Sorry? Location. Probably one of the first things we would do. Okay. What else? Absolutely. And that is something we need to do quickly. So probably we would say, quite often when you take over a new company, you have kind of a 30 days plan or a 90 days plan. We would, in this case, because we only have roughly a month, we would put down a plan for the first 7 days. Quickly start doing the things that you have to have in place, right? You have to have a band. You have to have a location. What else do you need to have? Sorry? Catering, absolutely. Yes, and then, yep. Catering, very important. Host. Okay. Anything else? Yes? Yes. Okay. What else? Okay, this is good. Yeah. Budget, absolutely. And that actually brings us to the picture here. There are a few other things that might come up, but this is exactly how we would go about. We would actually draw up this timeline. They say, okay, we have this time. We have to deliver there. We are here. This needs to be done. And then you start putting it on the timeline. Location, band, catering, the first things you do, host, etc. Okay, now let's jump on to the slide and see. We have 3 parameters which we consider to be of high importance, let's say, in this case: time, performance, and cost. What is the constraint of the project? Time? Do you agree with him? Performance? Okay, but you can only choose one. Do you agree with this? Why would time be the constraint in this case? Yes? You can't change it. The date is fixed. It's quite obvious. So time is the constraint. You can't change it. So then we have to figure out what is that we can enhance and what can we accept as a kind of a trade-off. What should you enhance? This is a classy charity thing. Yes? Cost? In which way? As cheap as possible. Okay, yeah. The overall goal is, of course, to raise at least, what was it, $50 per person, but of course we would like to have as much as possible. But how can you, I'll come back to you in the back later, but how can you actually, by making something as cheap as possible, raise as much money as possible? Does it go hand in hand? Classy charity ball or ceremony as cheap as possible? What does it mean? You think they would? Okay. Do you agree? Who would actually say that this event must be as classy as possible? And in other words, you would enhance performance. Fancy ballroom, decorations. Okay. Good point. In the back, there was you had the point. Yeah. Okay. Why? Mhm. Okay. We have a suggestion here. Do you agree? No? Yeah. No, but maybe in this case, so you would put it here or what? You would enhance the cost. And cost, sorry? Here. What would you enhance? Okay. Yeah, cost here. But I think enhancing, no, sorry, accepting the cost doesn't mean that, or let's say, what does it mean to accept the cost? That it might become, on contrary to what you said, it might actually become a bit more expensive than we thought because we are putting extra into the performance so that happy clients at the gala dinner or the reception or whatever it eventually will be will pay more. So we accept that it goes slightly beyond our budget because we are giving an extra thought to the performance. Do you agree? Agree? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Um, you're actually quite well ahead of us now, but I think your thinking is you know, good. Yes. Okay. So let's not get too stuck in sort of this particular case. The thing here is that we need to understand why we are doing this. Why are we putting up this kind of a picture? Now, in my mind, and that's just my suggestion, I think obviously time is the constraint. There's no question. We cannot change that. You want to have this a successful evening for the people with the money. So you would enhance the performance. You would hire a very funny host. You will have a good band, good food, extremely good catering, so that everyone is happy, a lot of alcohol, and then finally they will pour the money into the foundation or whatever it is. So actually, by hiring an extra funny host, you actually exceed your own budget from the beginning, but you accept it because you believe it will create a much better evening, right? That's my opinion, but you might have a different one. The thing here is not whether mine is right or wrong, but how do we use this kind of a model? Okay, so now let's continue before we get stuck in this and forget ourselves. Work breakdown structure. Very, very important. Absolutely one of the crucial things when it comes to project management. And this is basically the overall picture. If you have no work breakdown structure, you are in a, let's say, you are facing a big problem. The work breakdown structure is an overview, a systematic breakdown of all the items in the project. The work packages, as you heard about in the video, it's a systematic structural breakdown of all whatever is involved in the work breakdown structure. It's a kind of a map of the project. Once you have done the scope, once you have done the deliverables, you come up with the work breakdown structure, because now you know, after a well-defined scope and deliverables, you now know what you want to get out of the project. So then you put it up as a work breakdown structure. Outline with different level of details. There is a certain limit. You can't go deeper into outlining any project. There is always a lower limit. That is what we call, at the end, you face a work package, which is the smallest item of task included in the whole project. We see that in a minute. Work breakdown structure defines all the elements of the project in a hierarchical framework, and you can see also the relationship between the project and the items within the project, and the structure, etc. And it also gives you, and that is one of the beauty of the whole thing, it also gives you chance to put cost and time, etc. onto the table. So you can actually use the work breakdown structure to gain not only overview of the tasks and the work packages, but also overview of the total cost, or the estimated total cost of the project. And then, as you can see down at the bottom, WBS is work breakdown structure, but OBS is organizational breakdown structure. And that comes about when you have defined the work breakdown structure and you bring in departments of the organization to analyze and point out who is doing what. But we are not there yet. Let's just take a look at the work breakdown structure, and we are seeing an example from the textbook where we are actually producing a personal computer prototype. Now that consists of all kinds of work packages and tasks, etc. And on this level, this is the first level, obviously, because this is the deliverable. This is what we want to get out of our project, a personal computer prototype. Then on the second level, we have sort of parts of the hardware, you can say, or we have not the hardware only, but the sort of physical things. We have the software, we have the mouse, the disk storage units, etc., etc. And if we take this one, the disk storage units, and we break that one down to the third level, and remember, third level of details, we realize that disk storage unit is built up by three major components: floppy, optical, or hard disk. And in our case, we are building a computer with a hard disk. So we break that one down to a certain level, the lowest manageable sub-level we can find. Because the hard disk is put together by putting together a motor, a circuit board, chassis frame, and read-write head. You can't break it down any further, because we are not going to make the circuit board ourselves. We are not going to make these things here. We are just going to buy them and put them together. So that is why this is our lowest level of detail. Now, the motor is just one piece. Work package 1, right? There's only one motor running the hard disk. But there are more items concerning the circuit board. You've seen how they put all these small things on the circuit board. And these are things that we buy, we put together, and then the chassis frame and the read-write head. All of this is all of this consists of work packages that are the lowest detail we can get, because we are not going to make this, we just buy it. And someone in our organization has identified how many pieces of this package, this work package we need, how many of this one and how many of this one, and obviously only one motor. So this is what we put together, and then we have what a hard disk consists of. So you can see we are just breaking down the overall picture, the overview. We are breaking it down into smaller pieces of work or tasks that needs to be done until we can't break it down any further. And that concludes our overview of the project. So now we will come back to the issue of work breakdown structure many times in the course. But now just try to get the overall idea. What is it? It's a part of defining the project, but we can use it for much more purposes. We are, for example, today not going to put any cost on it. We will do that in more details later. So a work package is also something you need to be familiar with. Defines work, sort of what needs to be done. What do we need? We need all these things to put together a hard disk. It could also identify time, for how long to complete. This could be a task, actually. Doesn't have to be a piece. Could be tasks needed to implement, and we could identify how long time it will take. It identifies a time-phased budget to complete. We could actually put cost on those things here if we need to conclude them, and that summarized together will give us the overall cost figure of the project. And then identifies resources needed to complete. That answers the question how much. Identifies a single person responsible, etc. You can actually see a work package telling us or giving us various information from, of course, depending on the nature of the project. Now, creating a work breakdown structure is not an easy task. You can, of course, today have software that helps you to bring out pictures of all this, but it is not an easy task. If it is a small project that you're working on, you can actually involve most of the team members, but mainly in a bigger project, this would be the task and the responsibility of the project manager and certain key players in the teamwork and the team. Work breakdown structure should be an end item or output oriented. It's to help us get overview. And it's not just to follow the organizational structure, it's to help us to get an overview of what kind of elements are included in this particular project. In other words, it's not necessarily the same in the next project. And it focuses on concrete deliverables. That is what is, of course, one of the main advantages. Tells us exactly what we need to get out of the project and what that actually requires. So take a look and read in the textbook how they describe and explain this drawing here. But I think it's sort of pretty logical that we start on this level, we can break it down, but then there is a limit for how long or how sort of into how many details you can break down the work packages. So for now, just get an overall picture of the work breakdown structure, and we'll come back to it later on with more sort of elements of it. Once you have done it, once you have done the work breakdown structure, you can actually include the organizational breakdown structure. And that gives you more details, more information about how in the organization you are actually going to implement the project. Because it basically tells you which department is going to be working on which work package, and so on. It assigns the lowest organizational unit responsibility for work packages within a project control or a cost account. That's where the cost comes in, because you attach that to the organizational department that does the job and the work package itself. So basically, using the same model or the same photo we had earlier, we had just put in here the organizational functions and connected it to the previous model or the previous drawing. And just to explain a bit, if we just take the motor here, we need one motor, and it will be the purchasing department of our organization that takes care of buying the motor. If we take another example, the circuit board will actually include people from the design department, from production, test, and software. So by doing this, by linking the organizational breakdown structure to the work breakdown structure, you can actually have, first of all, an overview of the project, and then secondly, who is going to do what. And then, when you have covered all this, you can start putting figures on each part, each place, to indicate how much will it cost. How much will it cost to buy one motor? How much will all this cost? What will be the cost of this particular work package here, performed by the design people in the manufacturing unit, and has to do with the circuit board? What is the cost of it? When you have put in cost at all places, then you have the total estimated cost of the project. As I said, just get the overview, just get the feeling for it, understand what it is, why we're using it, and then we come back to it later on. Just to quickly to show you in a very, very simple way. Have you taken a look already? Anyone? Okay. But this is how, basically we are doing the same, but with yellow stickers or posters. How many of you use that in your work in studying, except from putting it on the computer with numbers or something? Have you used it in projects? The yellow posters, you have one. Okay. Well, a break in the recording, but we will continue and take a look at this video, and then we come back. Okay, having seen this video makes things look quite simple, doesn't it? It's very simple to use. So, before next time, think about a project that you have done or that you want to do, and if you have a lot of stickers at home, bring some, or I'll also bring mine, so you can we will have plenty of stickers, and then I will line you up across the room here, and you will actually do a work breakdown structure of that particular project on the walls. Okay? Yeah, next class. Yeah, we have also the exam and hopefully a guest speaker. It doesn't take long, especially enough if you have thought about it until you get here. Okay? Just must be simple, or doesn't have to be simple, but can be simple, only few sort of overheads. But think in a structure. Think like a work breakdown structure. And then you do it here on the walls. Okay, the fifth and the last, or not last, but the fifth point is coding the work breakdown structure for the information system, if you are using that. We come back to that level, back to that thing later on. But basically, just to sort of simplify, it's like an index in a report. It's just like chapters and sub-chapters. In this case, it's it's a sort of levels and sub-levels and sort of broken down, as I said earlier, into the smallest details possible. But it's just to give the information system we use some sort of place to relate to. Responsibility matrices. Who is actually going to do what, when, and what is the responsibility of that person? It's also called sometimes a linear responsibility chart. It summarizes the tasks that need to be done and lists up who is responsible for doing it. It lists project activities and participants, so it's a very good thing to do in the beginning of a project implementation, to list up what needs to be done. For example, in this case, we would list up what needs to be done in the first 7 days and who is going to do it. Who is going to hire a band, who is going to find the location. Could be the same person, but we could also divide by some other members of the team. Clarifies critical interfaces between units and individuals that need coordination. It's also a tool for the manager to sort of see links between the tasks and the people, etc. Provides a means for all participants to view their responsibilities. Clarifies the extent or type of authority that can be exercised by each participant. So it's basically to help everyone realize what needs to be done, who is going to do what, and why. It could look like this. There are many examples, and you'll see that in the textbook. Just take a look, read about the definitions and explanations. Could be like this. Here is a list of tasks, and obviously the list could be much, much longer. And then the project team, Richard, Dan, Dave, etc., and you put in what, who is responsible and who supports or assists. You could also have different terms. You can also have different sort of points here. The main thing is overview. That is what this is all about, having an overview. The work breakdown structure is an overview of the whole project. The organizational breakdown structure is an overview of who is doing what, and then you can actually break this down into smaller units and smaller tasks. You could actually just pull out one part of the work breakdown structure and identify who is going to do that. It's all about overview, because otherwise you cannot proceed in a sort of systematic manner. Could also be like this. Deliverables, design, development, these are the organizational functions here. Testing, purchasing, etc. And then there is a code, please. There is a code for what is the major task, etc. I will not ask you at the exam about certain types of matrices like this, but rather why do we use them, why are they important, and how can they help? Because throughout the whole thing, I'm not necessarily looking for whether you remember something I said. It's more like if you understood what both I said, but also what is in the book about the nature of project management. So understanding is the key I'm looking for. Keep that in mind. And then project communication plan. Who is it that we need to talk to? Who is it that we need to meet with on a regular basis? What information needs to be collected about the project and then sent out? Who will receive the information? Can we actually send out information? Remember from earlier today, we talked about a dedicated project team that might be working on a very sensitive marketing material. So you might not even be able to send it by email or by, not of course, by any other means. What information methods will we use? What are the access restrictions, etc.? So there are all kinds of things, depending once again on the nature of the project, that you will have to come up with when you define the project communication plan. And then the first thing is to do, you need to do, is to identify who is the stakeholder. How many do you need to keep informed? And now I want to tell you out of my personal experience that there are two things you need to remember when you are starting to identify the stakeholders. First of all, when you take on a new project, there might be many stakeholders, of course the client, and then team members, etc. Who is it that can actually be vital for your success as a project manager? Who is it in the environment that you should keep informed at all times and sort of could be, could have an effect on the success of the project? And then also, who is it that could actually prevent it from succeeding? Because don't think that there is always, everyone happy about you getting a project. Might be someone who actually wants to work against you succeeding in a project. That is also quite often. Have you experienced that? Have you experienced someone working against you when you are just trying to do your best in a project? Okay, well, you might someday. Let's hope not, but, it's not all nice and easy out there, so that's how it is. Information needs, what kind of information? Who needs to know what? Once again, once you have defined the stakeholders, who are the most important ones? Whom should you meet for lunch, for example? Whom should you meet for a more formal way? Who is the one that just requires a phone call, etc. Has to do with the nature of the project, but also the type of stakeholders you have. Sources of information, etc. Responsibility and timing. Who will send out? Is it you as a project manager, or can you actually allow someone in the team to be the kind of spokesman for the project? That is a bit tricky, because you are always responsible. So you have to plan that carefully. But by setting up a communication plan, you are actually controlling the flow of information, and that is extremely important. If you set up a communication plan, you introduce it to the client and say, this is how we are going to communicate. Every other week, we are having a formal 1-hour progress meeting. In between, we can meet ad hoc if necessary. But this is putting you in the controlling seat, right? You are the one providing information, deciding on how to and when to give out information, etc. Project plan could look like this. What information you need to sort of list out what kind of information is needed. Milestone report is a typical thing to inform about. Target audience. Which one of the stakeholders is it that will receive a milestone report, and when, and how, and who is going to give it to him. Just things like that. So, in the book, there are many checklists which you can use in your future work as project managers, and there are also maybe even useful for you in your studies. But just take a look at them as a model. You can fill in different terms and different sort of words, but it's a model for you to work in a systematic and sort of step-by-step manner. Okay. Why is defining the scope of a project so important? That is a very interesting exam question with 4 alternative answers. Project manager must make a trade-off between time, cost, and scope of a project. Why and how should he do it? How does the work breakdown structure help the project manager to do his work? And also, what is the nature and the role of the organizational breakdown structure? Etc. Why do companies make internal communication plans when implementing projects? If you think about it, that's a good question. Why do we need within our own organization to have a communication plan on how we talk to each other? Well, first of all, because you might be bound by a time frame. You need to finish within a certain limit, but also you need to document. You need to document the flow of information, what has been said, what has been what information has been gathered. Why do you need to document? Why do you need to document the flow of information in any project? Yes. If someone suddenly leaves the project and there is nothing documented about earlier stages and future stages, then it's very difficult to replace that person. You're right. Someone could leave, but it's also so that is absolutely true. You have to have that so that someone can step in and so that others can sort of follow and everyone knows why we're doing it. Has to do with strategy, etc. But it's also to learn from the project, because when we come to the end of the project, you go through something called lesson learned, and that's when you have to realize, how did we communicate or did we not communicate? What was being communicated and so on? What can we learn from this? Okay. Are you very tired? You look very exhausted. Huh? Yeah, I can see that. Okay. So, in that case, we wait with the Morocco case until later. Does it sound good? Is anyone opposed? Shall I continue with the Morocco case? Can I see hands? Or what? You look very tired. I don't know, maybe it's getting a bit late in the day or what. But the day is getting longer. Have you realized? So you should be feeling better. But anyway, we will wait with the Morocco case. It was just meant to sort of, and we will take it later on. It was meant to add on few other points. But next Monday there will be, I hope, a guest speaker. There will be an exam in one of the classes, and you will do the work breakdown structure on the wall. That is what is fixed. And then maybe if we are feeling up to it, we'll just finish and do the Morocco case then. Okay. Yes? Yes. No. Yes. There is. All the questions are multiple choice questions. There is only one alternative correct. You will not get downgraded or minus for wrong answer. You don't get anything. That's how it is. All right. Let's call it a day then. Thank you. See you in a week.